Good morning and welcome to the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means, Senate Committee on Finance, the Subcommittee on General Government. I will be chairing today's meeting, and we've got a few budgets we get to hear close today. Excuse me. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Senators Buck, Taylor, Neal, Assembly Members Backus, Koenig, O'Neill, Torres Fawcett, Watts, Chair Anderson.
And I am present. Thank you so much. So we've got more than a few budgets that we get to close. We're actually going to start off with the OCIO, Office of the CIO, account 721-1373. Mr. Weber, if you would like to take it away.
Good morning, Chair Anderson and members of the subcommittee. I'm Tom Weber, I'm Program Analyst with the LCB Fiscal Analysis Division. This morning, I'll be presenting the closing documents for the Office of the Chief Information Officer. There are 7 budget accounts for the subcommittee's consideration, 3 of which were previously heard by the subcommittee on March 26th, and 4 of which are recommended as staff closed budgets, for which no major issues were identified. The first budget account for the subcommittee's consideration is the Office of the Chief Information Officer budget account, discussion of which begins on page 3 of the closing packet. So on page 3, this is budget account 1373. The OCIO, formerly the Division of Enterprise Information Technology Services within the Department of Administration, establishes enterprise vision and strategies for state agencies and oversees 6 operational units, including the Nevada Office of Cyber Defense Coordination, which the governor recommends transferring to the OCIO over the 2025-2027 biennium. There are 2 major closing issues in this budget account, the first of which pertains to the creation of a centralized fiscal unit. The governor recommends total expenditure authority of approximately $487,000 in fiscal year 26 and $500,000 in fiscal year 27 to fund 1 new accounting assistant position and associated operating cost, and to transfer 3 existing management analyst positions and associated operating costs from other OCIO budget accounts to create a centralized fiscal unit. And according to the OCIO, its fiscal responsibilities have increased with the passage of Senate Bill 431 of the 2023 legislative session, necessitating the creation of a centralized fiscal unit. So moving on to page 4. Senate Bill 431 transitioned the former EATS from the Department of Administration and established the OCIO under the Office of the Governor, which, according to the agency, allowed the OCIO to bring its fiscal operations in-house. And accordingly, the governor recommends the creation of a centralized fiscal unit. As summarized on page 4, included in the request is 1 new accounting assistant position to provide direct support for accounts payable and accounts receivable duties. And then there's the transfer in of 3 management analyst positions from the client services unit budget account, the computer facility budget account, and the data communications and network engineering budget account. According to the OCIO, transferring 3 management analyst positions to the Office of the Chief Information Officer budget account under a centralized fiscal unit would provide more flexibility to work on agency-wide items. And because the Office of the Chief Information Officer budget account is funded via cost allocations, the agency indicates the impact of the recommended transfers would be cost neutral. So moving on to page 5. During the March 26th budget hearing, the OCIO further indicated that prior to becoming its own department, the billings and invoices for OCIO services were processed by the Department of Administration Administrative Services Division before being sent to the OCIO for final approval, but now a large number of financial transactions are handled internally. And the agency further indicated the new accounting assistant position is intended to assume responsibility of clerical tasks currently handled by the management analyst positions and would prepare various financial reports and provide general accounting fiscal support. So as shown on page 5 of the closing packet, the decision for the subcommittee is Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of total expenditure authority of $487,199 in fiscal year 26 and $499,868 in fiscal year 27 to establish one new accounting assistant position and associated operating costs, and to transfer 3 existing management analyst positions and associated operating costs to create a centralized fiscal unit as recommended by the governor?
Is there any discussion on this information? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion at this time.
I make a motion to accept as stated by staff.
Thank you. A motion made by Chair Neal, second by Vice Chair Bacchus. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion's been adopted. Let's move on.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. The second major closing issue for the OCIO budget account 1373 begins on page 5 and relates to the discontinuation of Administrative Services Division fiscal services. Through 7 budget amendments, the governor recommends removing total cost allocation expenses of approximately $1 million in each year of the 2025-2027 biennium previously paid by several OCIO budget accounts to the Department of Administration, Administrative Services Division for fiscal services. Additionally, the budget amendment that's specific to the OCIO budget account 1373, the governor recommends reserve reductions of approximately $770,000 over the 2025-2027 biennium to fund one new accountant technician position, one new accounting assistant position, and associated operating costs to support the centralized fiscal unit. And this is inclusive of $225,000 in each year for vendor costs. And the governor recommends transitioning OCIO fiscal operations and services from the Administrative Services Division to the OCIO effective July 1st. Moving on to page 6. According to the agency, bringing its fiscal operations in-house will result in the streamlining of efforts and overall savings to the OCIO. The total fiscal impact of the 7 budget amendments is depicted in the table on page 6. And the positions recommended in the budget amendment for 1373, budget account 1373, are summarized on page 6 and include the accountant technician, and accounting assistant. As shown in the table, the transition of fiscal operations to the OCIO would provide a net cost reduction of $1.2 million over the 2025-2027 biennium. And at the time of the budget hearing, it was unclear if the accountant technician and accounting assistant positions recommended in addition to associated vendor expenditures would provide sufficient fiscal support for the OCIO. So moving on to page 7, during the budget hearing, the subcommittee inquired how the OCIO determined one new accountant technician and one new accounting assistant recommended in the budget amendment for this budget account would provide the necessary staffing to support all fiscal and accounting operations if the OCIO no longer utilized services provided by the Administrative Services Division. And in response, the agency indicated it had worked with the Administrative Services Division to determine the number of positions and level of support needed, and confirmed that if the new position and the transfer of 3 existing positions recommended in Major Closing Issue 1 were approved along with the 2 additional new positions recommended in the budget amendment, the OCIO would no longer need to utilize any Administrative Services Division services. And according to the agency, operational efficiencies such as electronic invoice processing, enhanced workflows, and automated billing processes would make it easier for a smaller number of internal staff to support the OCIO's fiscal operations. Since the various budget amendments that are shown in the table on page 6 across all OCIO budget accounts reflect the elimination of all cost allocation expenditures paid to the Administrative Services Division over the 2025-2027 biennium, the subcommittee asked how the OCIO planned to administer its various fiscal responsibilities as it recruits and hires for its new staff. In response, The OCIO indicated it plans to transition all fiscal operations in-house as soon as possible, and that if the associated requests were approved, it would immediately begin recruiting for the new positions. And if needed, it would continue utilizing the services of the Administrative Services Division until September 2025, as the individuals to fill those positions are recruited and onboarded. Follow-up information provided by the agency indicated that beginning July 1st, the fiscal year 26 fiscal tax currently performed by the Administrative Services Division would be conducted by the OCIO except for accounting and pay clerk functions. And as the agency recruits and trains the new accountant technician and accounting assistant positions, if approved, accounting and pay clerk tasks would transition over to the OCIO with a target handoff date of September 1st, 2025. And the OCIO indicated that the net cost reduction of $1.2 million that was previously paid to the Administrative Services Division could be used to lower the rates paid by agencies using OCIO services. So moving on to page 8. Fiscal staff would note that the reduction in Administrative Services Division charges to the OCIO of $1.9 million over the 2025-2027 biennium would continue to be needed to support the Administrative Services Division. However, the Governor's Finance Office did submit a budget amendment that would eliminate the creation of a new management analyst position for the Administrative Services Division, which the Administrative Services Division indicates recognizes the reduced workload if the OCIO no longer utilized its services. So as shown on page 8, the decision for the subcommittee is, does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of budget amendment A255341373, removing cost allocation expenses of $78,148 in each year of the 2025-2027 biennium, and adding reserve reductions totaling $770,155 over the 2025-2027 biennium to fund 2 new positions and associated operating and vendor costs to discontinue the use of fiscal services provided by the Administrative Services Division.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding this? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion at this time.
So I make the motion to accept as stated by staff.
Thank you. A motion was made by Chair Neal, second by Vice Chair Bacchus. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Hearing none, the motion's been adopted unanimously. And I think we've got one more in this budget.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. On page 8, there are 4 other closing items recommended by the Governor. Other closing item 3 is for a rebranding initiative. The Governor recommends renaming the Office of the Chief Information Officer to the Governor's Technology Office. And this request is contingent upon passage and approval of Senate Bill 12. And other closing item 4 is for equipment replacement, and fiscal staff recommends a technical adjustment to fund the enhancement entirely with reserve funding. As such, fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 and 2 be closed as recommended by the Governor. Other closing item 3 be closed as recommended by the Governor, contingent upon approval of Senate Bill 12 or other enabling legislation. Other closing item 4 be closed with the noted technical adjustment to the funding source, and request authority for staff to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion as stated by staff.
Motion's been made by Chair Neal, seconded by Vice Chair Bacchus. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's been adopted unanimously. And I think we get to move on to the next budget, which is OCIO Client Service Unit, account 7211365. You're on, Mr. Weber.
As the chair indicated, budget account 1365, the Client Services Unit. This is on page 11 of the closing packet. The Client Services Unit budget account provides information technology support for customer agencies and is responsible for an enterprise help desk, which provides 24/7 support. There's one major closing issue for the Client Services Unit budget account, which pertains to 3 new IT technician support positions. The governor recommends total reserve reductions of approximately $255,000 in fiscal year 26 and $297,000 in fiscal year 27 to fund 2 new IT technician positions and associated operating costs, and to continue funding for 1 IT technician position and associated operating costs to address an increase in the agency's customer base and workload. Additional information regarding this recommendation for the 3 IT technician positions is described on pages 11 and 12. Regarding the 2 new IT technician positions, the agency indicates that over the last 4 years, the Client Services Unit budget account has assumed responsibility for 130 new users and has not received additional staff or resources to support the increased workload. And the governor recommends 2 new IT technician positions which would be assigned to field support services to address this increased workload. So moving on to page 12. The positions would provide technical support for users, train users on new operations and applications, handle and track customer service calls, and perform system updates. And then regarding the continuation of the existing IT technician position as shown on page 12, the governor recommends continued funding for 1 IT technician position located in Las Vegas that was established in October 2023 to provide additional IT support services for the Office of the Military. According to the agency, the Office of the Military requested computer and network support services for 74 employees utilizing state technology, and which was not included in the Office of the Military's legislatively approved budget, which required an additional position in field support services to provide the requested IT support. During the budget hearing, the subcommittee inquired about the specific gaps in services that currently exist for customer agencies the 3 IT technician positions would address. In response, the agency indicated the IT technician positions are meant to allow field support services to maintain and enhance the current level of support provided to existing partner agencies as additional customers are onboarded and as additional state employees are hired. So as such, the decision for the subcommittee, as shown on page 12 of the closing packet, is: does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of decision units E332 and E334, reflecting total reserve reductions of $255,395 in fiscal year 26 and $297,351 in fiscal year 27 to fund 3 IT technician positions and associated operating costs to support increased workload in field support services?
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion at this time.
I make a motion to accept as stated by staff.
Second.
Motion's been made by Chair Neal, seconded by Vice Chair Bacchus. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion's been adopted unanimously. You're on, Mr. Weber.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. On page 13 of the closing packet, there are 9 other closing items for the Client Services Unit budget account. Other closing item 7 pertains to coronavirus state fiscal recovery funds used to replace the content management system. The agency indicates it projects to spend $1.3 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds in fiscal year 25, $974,060 in fiscal year 26, and $221,158 in fiscal year 27 to complete replacement of the content management system. The OCIO further indicates ongoing costs associated with the project would be funded by ARPA funds until December 31st, 2026, after which expenditures would be recovered from charges to user agencies through a cost allocation. Other closing item 8 is for the transfer of 1 management analyst position to the Office of the Chief Information Officer budget account. And this recommendation is discussed in and contingent upon approval of that major closing issue 1 in the OCIO budget account. And then other closing item 9 pertains to the discontinuation of Administrative Services Division Fiscal Services. That would remove cost allocation expenses previously paid to the Department of Administration for fiscal services and transfer that authority to the reserve category in the Client Services Unit budget account. And that recommendation was discussed and is contingent upon approval of major closing issue 2 in budget account 1373. So as such, and as shown on page 14 of the closing packet, fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 through 6 be closed as recommended by the governor. Other closing item 7 be closed with the noted technical adjustment to add ARPA, Coronavirus State Fiscal Recovery Fund Expenditure Authority over the 2025-2027 biennium. Other closing item 8 be closed consistent with the subcommittee's closing recommendation for major closing issue 1 in the Office of the Chief Information Officer budget account. Other closing item 9 be closed contingent upon the subcommittee's recommendation of the associated major closing issue 2 in the Office of the Chief Information Officer budget account, and request authority for staff to make other technical adjustments as necessary.
All right, any questions about this? Seems to be a really quiet committee this morning. Great. Are there, I would entertain a motion at this time.
I make a motion to accept as stated by staff.
Second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Hearing, motion's been adopted unanimously. And I think we can go on to a new account. You're on.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. The third budget account for the subcommittee's consideration begins on page 15 and is for the computer facility. The computer facility staff provide numerous computer processing services using a variety of systems and technologies and are responsible for managing, operating, and supporting the state computer facility and server environment. There are 2 major closing issues for this budget account, the first of which pertains to two new positions for the public-facing identity solution support. The governor recommends reserve reductions of approximately $167,000 in fiscal year 26 and $310,000 in fiscal year 27 to fund 2 new information technology professional positions and associated operating costs to provide support for a public-facing identity solution and the statewide rollout of the solution to all interested state agencies. The public-facing identity solution is a secure user sign-on system, and expansion of that service, of those services are recommended to be included in the infrastructure assessment, which would result in increased expenditures for agencies that do not utilize the new service. According to the OCIO, additional resources are needed to expand support for the public-facing identity solution selected by the Department of Health and Human Services for its No Wrong Door project and the Department of Motor Vehicles for its Department Transformation Effort project. The OCIO has participated in the implementation of the solution by those agencies, and this recommendation would consolidate costs and support efforts by adopting the solution as a statewide public-facing identity solution. So moving on to page 16. According to the OCIO, a public-facing identity solution serves as an interface between state agencies and external business customers and constituents utilizing state services. And because each state agency maintains a separate authentication system requiring customers to have multiple login credentials, agency-maintained authentication systems are proliferating. As a result of the deployment of the public-facing identity solution selected by the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Motor Vehicles, the agency indicates additional state agencies have expressed interest in adopting the solution, including the State Department of Agriculture, the Office of the Secretary of State, the Department of Education, and the Colorado River Commission. And the OCIO indicates that as the solution would be rolled out to additional agencies, there would be approximately 275,000 users per month, and the governor recommends approximately 108,000 in expenditure authority over the 2025-2027 biennium to fund the provision of of projected services and expand the cloud infrastructure to account for the new users. During the budget hearing, the agency indicated approximately 85,000 users have accessed the single sign-on selected by the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Motor Vehicles. And rollout of the solution to other interested agencies would provide additional security measures for logins. Additional cost savings could be realized if state agencies adopted a single identity solution, as user agencies would no longer need to pay for third-party platforms. The subcommittee expressed concern regarding the single identity solution being utilized by some but not all state agencies, resulting in non-user agencies subsidizing user agencies. And in response, the agency indicated its long-term plan was for the solution to be available to all executive branch agencies. And the infrastructure assessment is typically used to support solutions that could be economically provided to all agencies, regardless of whether a specific agency chooses to use that given solution. So as such, and as shown on page 17 of the closing packet, the decision for the subcommittee is, does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of reserve reductions of $166,000 of $166,733 in fiscal year 26 and $310,411 in fiscal year 27 to fund 2 new IT professional positions and associated operating costs to provide support for a public-facing identity solution to all interested state agencies.
Thank you so much. And are there any questions? All right, so hearing none, I really respect the fact that the agency is trying to make some changes and it'll make some long-term plans, but we are under some financial difficulties. And so I would actually like to instead go with not recommending approval to fund the 2 new IT professional positions and associated operating costs, and instead recommend approval of reserve reductions of $156,249 in fiscal year 2026 and $183,154 in fiscal year 2027 to fund 1 new IT professional position and associated operating costs beginning October 2025 to provide support for a public-facing identity solution to all interested state agencies. If I can hear a motion. Any questions about that idea? Okay.
All right, make the motion to accept as stated by chair.
Yes. Second. Thank you so much. Any further questions? Hearing none, I've got a motion made by Chair Neal, seconded by Vice Chair Bacchus. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's been adopted, and let's move on. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. The second major closing issue begins on page 17 and relates to 1 new IT professional position for cloud infrastructure support. The governor recommends reserve reductions of approximately $112,000 in fiscal year 26 and $134,000 in fiscal year 27 to fund 1 new IT professional position and associated operating costs to provide support for customer agencies seeking to use public cloud services. While expenditure authority to address personnel costs is included in the recommendation, expenses associated with configuring and migrating state agencies to a single public cloud environment and the associated rate and cost pool are not included in the governor's recommended budget. The OCIO indicates it does not have the resources to provide the necessary support to customer agencies seeking to use public cloud services, and as a result, the governor recommends 1 new IT professional position in the computer facility budget account to support a single public cloud infrastructure environment. According to the agency, the use of a single public cloud managed by the OCIO would reduce costs, since charges to use cloud-hosted infrastructure would be collected by the OCIO instead of third-party contractors, which could also reduce expenses associated with software development and allow for the consolidation of services. The agency indicates a new cost pool would be developed to track services and personnel expenditures associated with the recommendation, According to the OCIO, while only personnel costs associated with the IT professional position are currently recommended in Decision Unit E330, requests to address additional expenses may be contemplated over the 2025-2027 biennium. And during the March 26th budget hearing, the OCIO indicated it was proactively engaging with state agencies that would like to utilize a state-managed cloud infrastructure support, which includes the Department of Public Safety and the Department of Education. However, its current staffing levels are insufficient to onboard the requested services, and one new IT professional position would be sufficient to provide baseline support of a single OCIO-managed public cloud environment. So moving on to page 18. And the OCIO also indicated that user agencies would be switching cloud service from current vendors to the OCIO, and associated savings realized within user agencies would support the recommended new service and rate. The subcommittee also inquired about additional expenses that could be incurred as a result of configuring and migrating state agencies to a single public cloud environment, and whether a rate had been developed. And in follow-up provided after the hearing, the agency indicated cloud services are currently being used to modernize virtual servers used by agencies to store data and to manage systems that perform more efficiently on cloud infrastructure, for example, generic websites. And the agency further indicated additional expenses may be incurred as new agencies are brought into the OCIO public cloud infrastructure. And expenses associated with this migration would most appropriately be funded through the existing virtual server cost pool until internal workloads could be addressed and utilization data could be better analyzed to determine whether there was a need for a new rate or cost pool in the future. So as such, and as shown on page 18 of the closing packet, the decision for the subcommittee is, does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of reserve reductions of $111,904 in fiscal year 26 and $133,618 in fiscal year 27 to fund one new IT professional position and associated operating costs to provide support for customer agencies seeking to use OCIO-managed public cloud services.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion at this time.
Make a motion as stated by staff.
Second?
Motion's been made by Chair Neal, seconded by Vice Chair Bacchus. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion's been adopted. I think we just have one more decision.
And as previously indicated, the OCIO confirmed agencies using the identity solution discussed in Major Closing Issue 1 would be billed through the infrastructure assessment cost pool, and expenses associated with the migration of agencies to a public cloud environment managed by the OCIO, which is discussed in Major Issue 2, would be collected through the virtual server cost pool. So given the uncertainty of how many state agencies may utilize these services and which cost pool would be the most appropriate funding source, the subcommittee may wish to recommend the issuance of a letter of intent directing the OCIO to provide a status update on the implementation, utilization, and costs of these services. The letter of intent could require the OCIO to report to the Interim Finance Committee on the implementation and utilization of the identity solution and cloud-based services, and whether new rates or cost pools should be developed to track services and expenditures. The response to the letter of intent could be provided to the Interim Finance Committee no later than July 1st, 2026, so any recommended changes could be considered as the agency constructs its budget for the 2027-2029 biennium. And as such, the decision for the subcommittee, as shown on the bottom of page 18, is if either or both Major Closing Issue 1 and 2 is or are approved, does the subcommittee wish to recommend a letter of intent directing the agency to provide a status update on the implementation, utilization, and cost of the identity solution for which additional staff support is recommended in Decision Unit E275, and the OCIO managed public cloud environment for which additional staff support is recommended in Decision Unit E330, including whether new rates or cost pools should be developed to track services and expenditures.
Thank you. Are there any questions? All right, so before entertaining a motion, I do want to clarify as well that in this letter, we would be able to ask for a status update of the other agencies that are transitioning into this new cloud, of how many departments are actually doing so and how many departments have inquired into doing so. If there's a way to do that in the letter as well. Would that be needed to be part of the motion, or is that question enough?
Is it not? Oh, thanks, Chair Anderson.
So the question is enough.
The question's enough, and we'll get that incorporated into the letter of intent.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So with that information, I would entertain a motion at this time.
I make a motion as stated by staff.
Second.
So I've got a motion made by Chair Neal, second by Vice Chair Scheib. I almost called you Scheibel. Bacchus. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion's been adopted. One more in this unit, I think.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. And as shown on page 19 of the closing packet, there are 7 other closing items recommended by the governor. Other closing item 6 relates to the transfer of the management analyst position that's discussed as a major issue in the OCIO budget account. And other closing item 7 pertains to the discontinuation of the Administrative Services Division Fiscal Services, which is discussed in and contingent upon major closing issue 2 in the OCIO budget account. So as shown on page 19 of the closing packet, fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 through 5 be closed as recommended by the governor. Other closing item 6 be closed consistent with the subcommittee's recommendation for major closing issue 1 in the Office of the Chief Information Officer budget account. Other closing item 7 be closed contingent upon the subcommittee's recommendation of the associated major closing issue 2 in the Office of the Chief Information Officer budget account, and request authority for staff to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion at this time.
Make a motion as stated by staff.
Second.
Motion's been made by Chair Neal, second by Vice Chair Bacchus. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion's been adopted. Let's move on to our new budget of OCIO, Datacom, and Network Engineering.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. The next 4 budget accounts, the subcommittee has not previously heard, for which fiscal staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations. The closing recommendations for these 4 budget accounts are identified on page 29 on the summary page in the closing packet, which will allow the subcommittee members to make closing recommendations for the 4 budget accounts in one motion. And do you prefer that I pause for questions after each staff close, or go through them all at once?
Why don't you just go through them all at once with how chatty the committee is today? I think that would make sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So on page 21, the first budget account for which fiscal staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations is the Data Communications and Network Engineering budget account, which is tasked with maintaining the state's internet infrastructure, also known as SilverNet. There are no major closing issues in this budget account. There are 4 other closing items, as shown on pages 21 and 22. Other closing item 3 relates to the transfer of 1 management analyst position, which is discussed as the major closing issue 1 in the Office of the Chief Information Officer budget account. It's for the centralized fiscal unit. And other closing item 4 pertains to the budget amendment to remove cost allocation expenses previously paid to the Department of Administration from Data Communications and Network Engineering budget account 1386. Okay. The second budget account for which fiscal staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations is shown on page 23. It's the telecommunications budget account. There are 4 other closing items, as shown on pages 23 and 24. Other closing item 3 is for out-of-state travel, and fiscal staff recommends a technical adjustment to fund this enhancement entirely with reserve reductions. And moving on to page 24, other closing item 4 again pertains to the removal of cost allocation expenses previously paid to the Department of Administration. The third budget account for which fiscal staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations is the Network Transport Services budget account, as shown on page 25. There are 6 other closing items in this budget account, as shown on pages 25 and 26. Other closing item 5 relates to out-of-state travel and a recommendation for a technical adjustment to fund the enhancement entirely with reserve funding. On page 26, again, it's the removal of cost allocation expenses that was discussed in major closing issue 2 within the Office of the Chief Information Officer budget account. And the last budget account for which fiscal staff is responsible for developing closing recommendations and for which the subcommittee has not previously heard is the Office of Information Security budget account. And as shown on pages 27 and 28, there are 10 other closing items. On page 28, other closing item 7 is for one new IT professional position to support the Nevada Card Access System at the Las Vegas McCarran Center campus. And included in that recommendation is operating and equipment costs for 4 additional positions that were not recommended in the executive budget. And fiscal staff recommends a technical adjustment to remove that expenditure authority associated with those 4 positions that were not included in the executive budget. And so remove the expenditure authority with a corresponding increase to reserve. Other closing item 8 is for out-of-state travel. Fiscal staff recommends a technical adjustment to fund the enhancement entirely with reserve funding. Other closing item 9 is for equipment replacement. The OCIO indicated that this equipment was replaced in fiscal year 25 and that they no longer need this enhancement. So as a result, fiscal staff recommends not approving decision unit E 710. And other closing item 10, as previously discussed, it's the removal of cost allocation expenses due to discontinuation of Administrative Services Division fiscal services. So now I'm on the summary page for the other closing items on page 29. The decision before the subcommittee members, as shown on page 29, is fiscal staff recommends the following budget accounts be closed as recommended by the governor, with the technical adjustments noted, and request authority for staff to make other technical adjustments as necessary. Budget account 721, 1386, OCIO, Data Communications and Network Engineering, with other closing item 3 and the transfer of 1 management analyst position being closed consistent with the subcommittee's action on major closing issue 1 in the Office of the Chief Information Officer budget account 1373, and other closing item 4 reflecting budget amendment A255511386 and the discontinuation of Administrative Services Division fiscal services being closed consistent with the subcommittee's action on major closing issue 2 in the Office of the Chief Information Officer budget account 1373. Budget account 721, 1387, OCIO Telecommunications, with the technical adjustments noted in other closing item 3 and other closing item 4, reflecting budget amendment A255631387 and the discontinuation of Administrative Services Division fiscal services being closed consistent with the subcommittee's action on major closing issue 2 in the Office of the Chief Information Officer budget account 1373. Budget account 721, 1388, OCIO Network Transport Services, with the technical adjustments noted in other closing item 5 and other closing item 6, reflecting budget amendment A255531388, and the discontinuation of Administrative Services Division Fiscal Services being closed consistent with the subcommittee's action on major closing issue 2 in the Office of the Chief Information Officer budget account, which is budget account 1373, and budget account 721-1389, OCIO IT Security, with the technical adjustments noted in other closing items 7 and 8, not approving decision unit E710 for replacement equipment as reflected in other closing item 9, and other closing item 10, reflecting a budget amendment A255641389, and the discontinuation of Administrative Services Division Fiscal Services being closed consistent with the subcommittee's action on major closing issue 2 in the Office of the Chief Information Officer budget account BA 1373.
Thank you. Did anybody need us to have that read again? Just kidding, by the way. Okay, are there any questions? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion at this time.
I make a motion to accept as stated by staff.
Second.
Motion's been made by Chair Neal, seconded by Vice Chair Bacchus. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion's been adopted. Thank you so much. We're going to pause for a moment as we change staff. All right, let's come on back. And I think we've got our one last budget. So Mr. Barlow, if you'd like to take us away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Morgan Barlow, Program Analyst for the Fiscal Analysis Division of the Legislative Council Bureau. Here to present before you the Silver State Health Insurance Exchange, found on page 31 of your packet, budget account 1400. As a reminder, the Silver State Health Insurance Exchange, or more simply the exchange, was established to administer a state-based health insurance exchange and facilitate the purchase and sale of qualified health plans in compliance with the Federal Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act and the Federal Health Care and Education Reconciliation Act of 2010. The exchange is fully funded by a carrier premium fee, which is determined by the exchange's board, and is charged to insurance providers offering plans through the insurance exchange known as Nevada Health Link. Since fiscal year 2020, the exchange has been operating as a fully functional state-based exchange, operating both the Nevada Health Link, the website, and also the call center. The major closing issues brought before the subcommittee are those of 2 new recommended full-time positions, the first a plan certification support position, and the other a tribal liaison position. The governor recommends approximately $210,000 in reserve reductions over the 2025 to 27 biennium to fund 1 new management analyst position and associated expenditures. To participate on Nevada Health Link and to offer qualified health plans under the Affordable Care Act, insurance carriers must undergo a plan certification process. And the agency indicates that due to the increase in insurance carriers on the platform and evolving federal and state regulations, the current position that is assigned to plan certification can no longer manage the growing workload and complexity of the Affordable Care Act plan certifications. During the March 24th budget hearing, The agency recommended the new management analyst position would serve in a leadership role overseeing the review and certification of qualified health and dental plans offered through the Nevada Health Inc. marketplace. The table on top of page 32 provides an illustration of the increase of carriers and plans on the marketplace. Additionally, the agency testified the new position would aid in managing the increased plan certification workload related to the implementation of Nevada's public option, or the Market Stabilization Program. When asked about the start date of July 1st for this new position, the agency indicated that at the time of the budget hearing on March 24th, the review and preparation for the upcoming annual open enrollment had already started, and that peak workload typically occurs between July and September. According to the agency, recruitment activities for this position would begin upon approval by this body and the full committee. Therefore, the decision for the subcommittee is as follows. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of $209,815 in reserve reductions over the 2025 to 27 biennium to support one new management analyst position and associated expenditures as recommended by the governor?
Thank you. Are there any questions? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to accept as stated by staff.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made by Chair Neal, seconded by Vice Chair Bacchus. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's been adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moving on to the second decision point, which is a recommended new position, a tribal liaison position. The governor recommends approximately $170,000 in reserve reductions over the biennium to fund one new health program specialist position and associated expenditures. The agency is currently seeking to establish and strengthen partnerships with Nevada's 28 federally recognized tribes through the Tribal Partnership Program. This program consists of three components, which are summarized for you on page 33. The agency reported of the 28 federally recognized tribes within Nevada, 5 are participating in the enrollment and eligibility assistance component of the program. 2 are actively participating in the administrative support premium sponsorship component, with additional tribes expressing interest. And in terms of the policy support for claims processing, as of July 2024, 772 American Indian and Alaska Native members were enrolled in the health coverage statewide through the exchange. According to the agency, by January of 2025, enrollment had increased to over 1,000, approximate increase of 34%. During the March 24th budget hearing, the agency provided the current tribal liaison responsibilities are being handled on a part-time basis by the executive assistant to the executive director. However, the agency testified the workload required to maintain communication, stakeholder engagement, and program oversight has exceeded the capacity of part-time support. The agency indicated the recommended position would provide full-time, dedicated oversight of the Tribal Partnership Program and serve as the exchange's primary point of contact with Nevada's 28 federally recognized tribes. Additionally, the agency indicated the specific duties of this recommended position would, among other things, support outreach and engagement efforts to increase participation among the tribes and those not currently active in the Tribal Partnership Program, and maintain communication with existing partners and assist in resolving issues related to American Indian and Alaska Native claims processing. Therefore, the decision for the subcommittee is as follows. Does the subcommittee wish to recommend approval of $170,150 in reserve reductions over the 2025 to 27 biennium to support one new health program specialist position and associated expenditures as recommended by the governor?
Thank you. Are there any questions? Vice Chair Bacchus.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make a statement less than a question. I just want to say that I appreciate the Silver State Exchange considering this new position, but I think this position is going to be even more important given the federal government deciding to close down Indian health services, especially in our northeastern quadrant. So I think whoever you find to serve as this tribal liaison is going to have their work cut out for them, but hopefully it'll, unfortunately, may be a little easier because people will be looking for some sort of other health coverage while Indian health services won't be available, which is really unfortunate. But thank you, Chair, for allowing me that time.
Thank you for bringing up that point. Any further discussions or comments? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion as stated by staff.
Thank you. A motion's been made by Chair Neal, seconded by Vice Chair Bacchus. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's been adopted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That brings us to the other closing items, which are found on page 35. These items have not been highlighted with concerns. Therefore, fiscal staff recommends other closing items 1 through 6 be closed as recommended by the governor and requests authority to make technical adjustments as necessary.
Thank you so much. Here, any discussion? All right. Anybody like to make a motion? Would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion as stated by staff.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been made by Chair Neal, second by Vice Chair Bacchus. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion's been adopted. Thank you so much. All right, so that ends the budget hearing section, or I'm sorry, budget closing section. So let's now go into the last thing on our agenda, which is public comment. Is there anybody here in Carson who would like to make public comment? Seeing no one. Vegas? AVH, is there anybody on the phones?
Thank you, Chair. Our public lines are open and working. However, there are no callers to provide comment at this time.
Thank you, and thank you, everybody on the committee. Meeting's been adjourned.